Time now is 8:35. Almost 4 in 10 people believe the BBC is ineffective at being independent from the government. Only half believe it reflects different parts of the UK.
Those are just two of the findings from the Our BBC, Our Future questionnaire, the results of which are published today. So, who do we talk about this with? We talk about it with the boss of the BBC, the Director General, Tim Davie. Good morning to you.
Morning.
This survey, we've picked out a couple of bits there. How does that make you feel? Ineffective.
Well, overall, the survey was positive. I mean, you picked two stats. I think it's worth kind of just setting this in context for a second. We emailed 40 million people. In my job, you get a lot of feedback on the BBC, but we went out to licence fee payers, and this survey reflects the responses of 871,701 people. So
872,000.
And that is absolutely fantastic news that we got so much response back. Now, overall, it's a very important time for the BBC and public service broadcasting. Actually, I think globally, it's a real moment where we have to say, OK, what do we want at public service broadcasting and the BBC? So we wanted to listen to people. We got that feedback back. And to answer your question, Naga, actually, most people really care about the BBC. They think we absolutely need to be there, informing, educating, entertaining, doing the kind of journalism you're doing. And the overall results were very positive. Now, there were a couple of things, as you've hit at the top, saying you could do better in this, or if you're going to go anywhere, do more of this. And we're listening to that. That's what we're here for.
What do you think the public thinks public service broadcasting should deliver to them? And how has that changed in terms of we're in a different media landscape, aren't we now? We're facing different challenges, and we'll come to it: streaming, social media, YouTube, etc. What do you think the public thinks public service broadcasting should deliver?
Well, we ask people exactly that question. So people come to me and say, we've got Netflix, we've got Disney, good companies, we've got so much competition. Your car's probably got more computing power than where I grew up in Croydon, to give you any track that's ever been made musically. What do we do? So there were 3 things that the public wanted from the BBC. And we are here to serve every household. We don't have to be here. We're here to serve. It's an important institution to do that. We've done it for 100 years. And to your question, 3 things. One is pursue truth with no agenda. So this idea that in a polarised world, you go to social media, it's echo chambers, people shouting at each other. We are absolutely there to provide impartial news. Everyone has a view on how well we're doing, as you know only too well. And that is important. Second one is what I call homegrown storytelling. That means blue lights. It means celebrity traitors. It means the things that we do that no one else does. We tell the story. Local news. There's the biggest programme on BBC One most days, when we haven't got celebrity traitors or a bit of dancing going on, is local news, our regional news. Third thing is, I think, more important than ever. Actually, I feel this more than I've ever done, that the BBC's needed, to bring people together so that we can actually have a conversation where we may have different political views, but we are allowed to be friends. We are allowed to come together for sporting events.
It's probably worth pointing out a couple of things.
So they're the roles, I think.
It's probably worth pointing out a couple of things at this point. We haven't agreed any questions with you, so you've got no idea what we're going to ask you about.
Right.
Because that comes down to the thing about truth.
It's one of the joys of my job,
But there might be people watching thinking, oh, look, it's the boss of the BBC. He's their boss. So we've agreed a deal that we'll ask you certain questions. That hasn't happened. Of
course not. I actually have views about how you would start with a couple of negative figures, and I might have... But that's the...
Well, you won't be surprised to know I'm going to go back to that then, because 38% of people you asked thought your organisation, the BBC, is ineffective at being independent from the government. So just want to translate that into what you think that people... Do you think people think that you've got... The Prime Minister is in your ear, that the Culture Secretary is in your ear telling you what to do? When you hear that phrase, not independent from government...
Absolutely.
What do you think that means in practice? What do you think people think?
I think people are worried about the independence of a public service broadcaster. And by the way, on a global basis...
Help us with that. Be more practical. When I ask that question, I'm being open about it, do people think that your phone rings and there's a member of the government on it and you're like, uh-oh, because you're in their pocket? Do you think that's what that thought process is?
I get emails from people on every side saying, you're clearly someone's in your ear on this, or a lobby's doing this. That is absolutely what people worry about. Now, I'm going to set this in a global context. 74% of the world doesn't even have a free press. And if you look around the world, you can see politicians, understandably, in some cases, unacceptably in others, trying to get more influence on state media, public service media. We happen to have, in the UK, an independent broadcaster. And one of the joys of my job, you say it perfectly, is, I mean, it's kind of wonderful, but precious and slightly weird that people working for me can ask any question. It's a totally free process. I would ask you or any of the editorials in the BBC absolutely to deploy the editorial guidelines.
Which is why then...
Sorry. The direct answer is yes. That's what people worry about. They worry about, is the BBC being unduly influenced? 91% of people believe the BBC should be independent.
Well, are you being unduly influenced? Is the more important question in a way. People might think that, but are you?
So what happens
absolutely
when...
not, Charlie.
Happens?
I think absolutely not. I think, and I think it's absolutely sacrosanct for the BBC that we are independent, we report without fear or favour.
Let's explain then to our audience who's sitting here watching us interview our boss, the boss of the BBC. Ministers will call you. Government ministers will call you, of any government of any time will call you, and they say, we don't like what you're doing here. How does that translate to how it comes down to us, your journalists who are broadcasting or writing for the BBC? Explain to the audience that relationship.
Well, firstly, I think we should be really proud. We're very tough on ourselves sometimes, because when we go around the world, the BBC is an absolute glowing light for how we do it properly. And the first thing is, not many people, very, very rarely would someone call me on an editorial issue, because broadly speaking, it is respected that we have editorial independence.
But if it happens, say the government says we don't think that your journalists or your news coverage is treating us fairly.
And we listen to it. Of course we listen to it. But we're not reacting to one lobby or the other. What we're trying to do is if someone raises a valid point or a factual inaccuracy, we can check that. So I think the idea the BBC is not listening or we wouldn't take a call is ridiculous. But having said that, what we're doing, and I think that is respected by people...
That's normal editorial practice. We have those rigorous processes in place for accuracy.
That's how it works.
But for you, when the public says, or 872,000, etc., they say a proportion thinks we are not independent from the government. How do you, sitting on the breakfast sofa now, tell them this is what happens and this is why I can say that is inaccurate?
It's absolutely the case that if you talk to any of our leaders in the newsroom, the orders are very clear. Report against our editorial guidelines without fear or favour. Listen, to Charlie's point, people will call, people will say things, but I don't think we're influenced by that. What we're influenced by is our standards, our editorial guidelines. Everyone has a view how we do that. What I would say, however, is it absolutely is appropriate that people hold the BBC accountable. And that's different. I would ask you, have we ever said to you, you must cover this story? To Charlie's point, I wasn't, told these are the questions. You can ask me anything. That is absolutely how we operate in the BBC, and we need to demonstrate that.
But this is about independent from government. This is the point. That's what I want you to, while you're sitting here as our boss, say to our audience, of which 38% think we're ineffective at being independent from government. That's a significant number.
Sure. So, and what I think everyone needs to be, we need to demonstrate, because you can just talk at people, and we need to listen to people. And there's a couple of things going on there, if I may. One is, I can reassure everyone that we are independent editorially. We absolutely act without fear or favour. We may take incoming calls from every political flavour, but let's set this in the context of a global. People see what's going on around the world. You can see what's happening in different countries where governments are getting more muscular about control of public service broadcasting. So people aren't... It's not an invalid concern to be worried about governmental kind of interference in broadcasting and free journalism. I would say the BBC is a glowing light on that.
OK,
and I think that's what we need to fight for. And it is a worry. That does not mean we shouldn't be accountable, by the way.
Let's get through some other important territory.
Yeah.
If not the licence fee to pay for the BBC, then what?
I think we want to have a mechanic that is universal. So I think that's the really big choice. It may be called a licence fee. We've actually said we want some reform. We're interested in the scope of the licence fee, how it would work in terms of we currently have over 75s on pension credit don't pay. What are the right groups that should not be paying? Those things all need to be in the charter renewal. So the BBC technically comes to an end at the end of 27 and we get a new charter.
Subscription
so
for streaming?
I would absolutely look at how we can improve and reform the licence fee.
Okay, but you're asking
what I would
questions.
say, Charlie,
I was looking for an answer, really, as in, what is it if it's not the licence fee?
Well, I think it is a universal charge. We are not at the point where we're saying it has to be
What's
this
a universal
or that.
charge mean?
It means everyone is paying who is using and our services, and in live television at the moment, is that the right definition?
That could be a subscription.
No, it could be a subscription because I think when I say universal, I mean everyone pays. The whole nature of the BBC and public service is that we together, communally, do things that if you're on a subscription or advertising model wholly, what you get there is essentially you are there to just serve a proportion of society. This is a choice for all of us to have the BBC. And we should ask those questions.
So just to be clear, when you say everyone, just to be clear, do you mean everyone in the UK or everyone who watches the BBC? Because at the moment, everyone who uses the BBC service is supposed to pay a licence fee. If you don't use any of the BBC services, you don't.
Well, specifically, it is anyone who uses live television or watches a live television broadcast, plus the iPlayer.
Yeah.
So the point I'm making is, as we go through the charter process, it is really important that we look at exactly what the scope of a fee is and how it is delivered. I think that's part of the charter process.
Do you approve of people being taken to court for not paying the licence fee?
I think, actually, when you talk to people, I do approve of enforcement. And I think, actually, the regime, it has to be that... And actually, when you talk to most people who are paying their licence fee, they would say if people are evading the licence fee, it should be enforced, yes.
So, well, you're avoiding the word court. You're saying enforcement. So,
well, I support the current system, yes.
And that would mean that someone would pay a fine or could go to jail for not paying the licence fee.
Of course,
so you support that?
But I support the current system as part of the Charter. And this is why we really need to go into the Charter renewal process with an open mind and say, what's the right enforcement? I do think for the vast majority of people watching who we're there to serve, and this is what we get when we talk to people, they'll say, we must make sure that actually those people who should be paying are paying. That's fair. That's absolutely.
What do you think the worst thing that's happened about the BBC during your watch is? What's the worst thing that's happened?
I think that there's no doubt that when you get into, if you have crises or you make a mistake and you have to deal with issues, you worry that are they impacting the trust of the BBC? What would that be? I think we've had a number of issues. I think the hardest thing has actually been delivering something like our coverage of Gaza to make sure we're absolutely impartial, absolutely clear, pulling documentaries where we made a mistake. These things are hard.
What do you think that's done, particularly in that case? I mean, we've had a momentous week in terms of the Middle East this week with the first phase of the ceasefire agreement. And it's rocky. It's on shaky ground and the world is watching. And in terms of us broadcasting, like that documentary that was pulled, what do you think that's done for trust in our coverage in such a febrile environment? We started this interview talking about how we must be able to disagree as friends and we must be able to have the freedom without fear to discuss difficult subjects. What do you think that's done as we are seen as a place to go to when big world events are happening and news is breaking? What do you think that's done for the trust in us?
Well, overall, let me step back a bit, because Charlie asked me what's the toughest thing that's happened. You could have asked me what the best...
Well, I didn't. Well, I could,
but... the worst thing. No, but this is important, because it's about context and setting it fairly in context, is I actually think the BBC's choice to maintain impartiality in a world that is so polarised, we know it. It's weaponised, we've got lobbies everywhere, you know it in your lives, it's absolutely everyone trying to ascribe an agenda. If you make mistakes directly to question, it can impact trust, and I worry about that. What it doesn't indicate necessarily is systemic bias or failure across the organisation. I am very proud of what we're doing as a BBC. 80% of people are coming to the BBC every week, 94% every month. We're still very relevant despite all the competition. We're doing good work. To Charlie's point, what hurts me most is when we make a mistake and we have to be very clear with audiences. What does help if we're open about it? We're on the BBC discussing these things and talking about how we're fixing it. That's very... But they're the tough moments, sorry, when we make a mistake, and to Naga's point, that could impact trust. I think that is where you worry. Having said that, I think we're doing pretty well, and there's no arrogance in that. I think we're here to serve audiences. We've got to make it good value. But, you know, for most audiences, the BBC, and if you read the survey, it's very positive on people saying they want stuff from the BBC. Most people tonight will be debating celebrity traitors as well as the news.
No, absolutely.
We'll be you know, the women's rugby. I could go on. I won't give you the full spin because I'm sure you won't enjoy it. But it's absolutely critical we see the BBC in the round.
You mentioned sport there. The BBC has lost another major sporting event, the boat race. And will the BBC be losing more major sporting occasions? Because people worry a lot. You talk about things that people love the BBC for. You look at something like Wimbledon. You think at those key set-piece sporting moments where people get together around things. Are there going to be more losses?
I hope not. I think, in fact, we're picking up some sports rights in different places. So I think
when you say I hope not, that doesn't sound terrifically convincing.
Because it's a competitive market. It's outside listed events. You're into a situation, this is where the BBC funding comes in, we're into a situation where you are bidding for rights, so we've got to make choices. I think the sports team are fantastic. The biggest sports broadcaster in the UK in terms of people watching sport is the BBC.
If you're not paying sorry to interrupt, because I'm being told we've got a minute and a half, you know what it's like. If you're bidding for big sporting events and you have to make the decisions, OK, we'll lose some, like the boat race, we'll lose that. What do you lose? Where is the money being spent more on?
Well, I'll give you
Is it entertainment?
I'll give you a specific example in sport. We picked up the nations qualifiers in Scotland and Wales.
When you don't pick something up, when you lose something, where does that money go? Does it stay in sport? Are you still committed to sport? Does it go to entertainment?
We're totally committed to sport.
As committed.
But to answer your question, is we look in the round in terms of overall the budget of the BBC. It's like running any organisation. There'll be people running small businesses who go, look at my overall budget. If we save a bit of money there, we look across the board. Do we need more drama? One of the things you see in the report is people are fiercely supportive and proud of the regional BBC and pushing money out. Blue lights, yeah? We will look at how we spend that. On sport directly, I'm very bullish on sport. You know, look at women's rugby. We took those rights. So this isn't a declining story on sport. I'm sorry. I mean, we've made some choices in certain events, but it's actually been brilliant.
More than 30% want more sport and comedy and entertainment. Like you said,
welcome to my email.
40% want more drama and documentaries. 67% say they want the same now as in the future.
Well, there's a lot. I would love to give people more, but we're balancing that value for every household. So what's the right balance of those genres? By the way, my inbox is a fun place to be. I mean, you've got all those people who want more celebrity traitors, people who are slightly annoyed about the amount of sport. That's because they care. I care. But this is rather special. I mean, what I want to say finally about sport is having a listed events regime where we can protect some of those moments where I mean, I'm a sports nut, so those ideas where we come together and have the FA Cup final and we can all watch it together. These are amazing moments. The BBC, I think, is a great place on sport. There'll be some events we lose, there'll be events we win, but overall, the sports team that are based in this building in Manchester, I should say, they do a fantastic job, and we need to serve audiences on that.
There'll be people who probably preferred Milo, the dog who was here a little earlier, than the Director General of the BBC.
You feared that.
I know
there's no one competing with 13 puppies and a beautiful-looking Milo. I thought that was a low ball, I thought.
There are people quite a lot of people have called for you to go because of the controversies we talked about, the mistakes that have been made. You've had quite a lot of people saying in Parliament and elsewhere that you're not right for this job because of things that have happened. Have you had cause over that time to scratch your head and go, well, maybe they're right?
I would say the job's not... This job is not for someone who's faint-hearted. I think you do have ups and downs. I mean, you have ups and downs in the job, but I think over 5 years, the fact that going back to the top, if you look at what audiences want, they're proud of the BBC. We're fighting a good fight in the midst of a weaponised, huge media environment. I think we should be fiercely proud of the BBC.
If I go back to the question, if I may, Davie, can I go back to the question which was about you?
Personally.
Have you had occasion to think, am I in the right job? Have you ever gone through that thought process? Has that happened?
There are moments when you go in public life, in terms of the balances of, the pressures you get are very, very significant. What I would say, I've never doubted the need for the BBC, my personal passion for it, the fact that I love leading this organisation. I think we should all together be fighting for what is a unique British asset. And personally, you asked the question personally, I've never doubted that I should be doing that job. I want it. Finally, Charlie, I can decide a lot of things in this job. The one thing I can't decide is I'm not in charge of whether I'm in this job. So the powers are limited. But no, I think that the first thing, we're here to serve the public. It's very important that we were talking about the survey at the top. This was about listening to the people we serve and also being accountable and building trust. We're not perfect, and we need to keep improving, and that's what the Charter's about. And I'm excited by it.
We're being told that you've got to go elsewhere and talk to other people, so we have to do that. Thank you very much.
Real pleasure.
Davie.
Thank you.
Thank you.